To continue the charge skills, it's time we look at the ones you can build up regardless of whether you choose claws, swords, or even bloody windhammer if you really wanted to. Pretty much the only thing you can't charge them with would be a bow. These skills tend to have more broad applications than their claw-exclusive counterparts, with general damage boosts from things like Tiger Strike, the leech potential of Cobra Strike, and the triple elemental threat of Phoenix Strike. Let's start with the most straightforward of the three, Tiger Strike, which is pretty straightforward plus % damage per charge effect. That, of course, only applies on the skill you use to release the charge. As of 2.4, this skill is a bit more useful though, thanks to the fact that it only expends single charges rather than the whole stack, when you use a finishing move with it, that is. Meaning you can use abilities like Dragon Talon with it and get a strong first strike, middle range second strike, and still boosted but weaker third strike from the Talon in quick succession. And the same goes for the double hits of Dragon Claw, or just hitting in sequences with a fast weapon. Though sadly, these % damage boosts do only apply when you're applying a finishing move or normal attack, so don't treat them like an aura, but rather treat it as a boost to one of the series of the attacks. For percents, it's fairly straightforward. Each charge increases the damage of the hit by a fixed %, so the third charge will do 3 times the damage and give 150% boost to attack rating for the finishing move, while the first charge will only do basic % boost to damage and just a 50% boost to attack rating. The real perk of this skill comes from comboing it with other abilities or just big angry weapons. Moving down, we have sadly the least loved charge skill, Cobra Strike. This is the leech skill as we mentioned earlier, with it giving a decent life leech at 1 charge, that same amount of leech, but this time for life and mana at 2 charges, and then doubling the leech amounts at 3 charges, while still giving the 50% attack rating boost per charge of other martial arts skills. The problem is, while Cobra Strike can get the highest effective leech in the game, it's just not that useful to overload on it, especially if overloading on it requires multiple charge up hits beforehand. It can be used in a pinch to top yourself up by charging up and tapping the leechable enemy with it, much like flashing Redemption on a paladin. But it's not going to be a mainstay of any build as far as what you want to charge up with on a regular basis, since leech just doesn't provide enough utility as long as you have basic leech on your normal gear, which most melee characters do. Our third charging skill on the flip side is the exact opposite. It's one of the most popular charge skills in the game, and that is Phoenix Strike, which packs fire, ice, and lightning all in one nice standalone package. The only drawback being you generally have to focus a lot of points on its synergies to make it truly as dynamic as it sounds, so you'll usually find people choosing 2 of the elemental claw charges to push to 20, so you at least have 2 of the elements in a favorable state, and each of them have their own pros and cons, especially since there are next delay effects on both the lightning and cold effect, meaning you get a lot of damage out of it. You'll generally have to wait for the lightning to loop back around just a few frames after the ice effect. As with the other charge skills, you get attack rating for each charge, but it's half as much as the others, with only 25% at 1 charge, 50% at 2, and 75% at 3. But it also packs some pretty gnarly skills, with your single charge dropping a meteor on the target, your second charge unleashing a lightning storm of sorts that fills much of the screen while looping back in on itself, and finally the third charge providing what amounts to an off-brand frozen orb, which instead of unleashing a ball, unleashes a flurry of curving spikes. Similar to the other elemental skills, plus % skill damage does not apply to these effects, which is unfortunate, but they're still fun to use. The 2 main strategies for this post 2.4 era are to either charge up and unleash all 3 charges with a Dragon Talon series, or use it with claws and go for the Dragon Flight and Dragon Talon combo to again release all 3 effects in quick order, but this time against a target you really want to kill. It is important to note for these that since these are designed to be used with normal weapons, not just claws, if you are using dual claws, it will only charge up the ability by swinging your main claw. The secondary claw will be fairly useless to the ordeal, which will take some getting used to if you prefer running dual claws with fire, cold, and lightning charge effects on the left, but it's still pretty serviceable. So, which charge skills do you use? Are you a claw fiend and use the ones that are on screen now, or do you prefer sword and board like we were talking about in this episode? Mention it down below, and as always, a special thanks to those of you that support the channel directly through memberships and Patreon, as well as those of you that pick up games off of Humble Bundle using the referral link. It helps out more than you could ever realize.